Folks, going off of the end of our last video, the hauntings surrounding the Bell family and their household had now been made public. At least, John Bell had went ahead and decided to take one of his close friends into his confidence and tell him about what had been plaguing their family. And rightfully so, because at this point, John was kind of at the end of his rope. He and his wife and the rest of his children were not hardly getting any sleep at all. And he wasn't sure what to do. So at this point, his friend says, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and try and take care of this for you. And he and his wife accompanied the Bell family back to their home, and everything passed pleasantly throughout the evening. They had a nice supper, but by the time it was bedtime, everybody had laid down. Sure enough, all of a sudden, the noises started all over again. The gulping for air, the rats clawing and gnawing, the knocking on the logs, and by this point, it had begun to progress even more into where they were hearing these faint, disembodied whispers that couldn't really be made out as to what exactly they were saying, but sounded very similar to an elderly woman singing hymns. But regardless, John's friend had come to expect all of that, but he wasn't exactly expecting what happened next, because suddenly his blanket that was covering he and his wife was jerked off the edge of the bed by an unseen hand. And at this point, his friend gets up and says, "In the name of Jesus Christ, you will cease this assault on the family." And suddenly, it stopped. And the rest of the evening actually passed by pleasantly. The next morning, John's friend simply told him, "I do believe that what you have on your hand is a spirit such as is mentioned in the Bible." But unfortunately, from that point on, the witch in particular, the spirit, whatever was haunting them, ended up not actually causing them any harm or discomfort, at least while John's friend and his wife were still there. But almost as soon as they had left, things started up all over again. Another time, one of John's friends came over and said, "I will capture the witch for you." And he makes claim that in the middle of the night, as he was sitting right in front of the fireplace, he heard walking coming towards him from the darkness. And he was sitting there with a blanket across his lap, and suddenly he heard the footsteps coming right around in front of him, when suddenly he sprang up from the chair, threw the blanket over where exactly he imagined this figure's form to be at, and he latched on and felt something solid inside the blanket. Now, presuming he had caught the witch, he went ahead and picked it up and was getting ready to throw it into the fireplace, but all of a sudden the blanket just went limp, like so many rags. And his friend failed in his mission to capture the Bell Witch. By this point, word had got out of the hauntings going on with the Bell family, and they had even begun to attract attention all throughout the state of Tennessee. In fact, even with some of the notable upper class, including one of particular fame, Andrew Jackson, who was actually curious about this whole affair and decided that he wished to pay a visit to see what was going on. But some sources state that he spent the night there, and other sources state that he only stayed for a couple of hours before he got out of there, and he said, "By the Eternal, I will never set foot in that place again." But the hauntings would still persist. They were not quite done yet, and we're going to continue to discuss those hauntings in our next clip.